You're listening to McKinsey Talks Operations, a podcast where the world's C-suite leaders and McKinsey experts cut through the noise and uncover how to create a new operational reality. Each episode considers the challenges companies are facing and the opportunities leaders can seize for competitive advantage in an ever-changing macroeconomic environment. We'll look at how to connect the boardroom strategy to the front lines, ways to increase performance, where and when to infuse technology, and why empowering the workforce with skills and capabilities is key to success. How well do you understand the processes of your business operations, especially if your organization spans thousands of locations and has grown through acquisition to accumulate a great number of variable business processes throughout those years? Imagine creating a living digital twin that helps you visualize where processes are working, where they're getting stuck, and uncover hidden opportunities that create value. Process mining and process intelligence have emerged as transformative technologies, offering organizations, particularly in healthcare and service sectors, the ability to streamline processes, reduce costs, and enhance performance. Yet, many leaders are still unaware of its full potential. Joining me today are Mike Kaufmann, a healthcare leader, a board member, and a former CEO of a Fortune 15 company, and Steve Eklund, a McKinsey partner specializing in service operations. Together, they bring us their extensive knowledge on optimizing processes across service industries. And they're going to shine a light on technologies and how they can add value in healthcare and service organizations. Welcome to you both.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Good day. Nice to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of what we've learned.
Mike, you spent many years in various roles in your last company and got to see many aspects of that organization. Once you stepped into the CEO role, I'm sure you had a good sense of what was working and what could be improved. Were you already aware of the power that process mining could bring to that organization? What prompted you to start looking into that discipline?
Yeah, it's a great question because actually I had never heard of process intelligence or process mining, or at least in a way that I understood what it meant and what the power of it was. And so at the time when I stepped into the role, I hadn't heard of it. Being a C-suite leader for almost 20 years, I was at Cardinal 32, but I spent 20 years in the C-suite in different roles, with the last 5 as CEO. But one of the things I learned really early on as a C-suite leader is that you need to be very purposeful about setting aside time to have clean, clear, quiet time to think strategically and to network. And I think a lot of times people aren't purposeful about that. And at the end of their day, weeks, months, years, they find out they didn't really get to do that. And so I was always very purposeful about that. And while I was actually taking advantage of a networking situation, I started talking to another really well-respected CEO who was running a large company. And he started telling me about process mining and process intelligence and how it was saving his company over $100 million a year. And so that to me was enough to be curious, ask more questions, meet with the company that he was utilizing, work on a proof of value or a proof of concept with them, and found there was significant value for us at Cardinal Health. And so that's how I became, part of it and got really deep into it and found it to be incredibly valuable for us.
And what kind of business challenges, Mike, did you then kind of put under the microscope once you discovered this kind of new way of bringing transparency?
One of the things that I learned early on about process mining and process intelligence is you can think about it in a couple different buckets. First of all, it's got the power to just give you immediate savings. Like you could put it in areas like accounts payable, and it'll see where you paid something twice or paid it early, or you put a customer on credit hold, or something in the supply chain isn't going to really come in on time. And so there's a lot of opportunities to deploy it in the areas that immediately impact your bottom line. But what is just as powerful, or maybe could be more powerful depending on your situation, is when you can use process intelligence effectively to cut across multiple systems within your company, where you normally don't get to see end to end an entire process and how it works. You're able to gain insights that maybe, again, it's not broken, but you see insights into how your customer is buying, how your margins are being generated, how you can improve, customer satisfaction, et cetera. And you start to gather insights that you can then act and do other things in order to improve again, your net promoter scores, your supply chain, your relationships with suppliers, et cetera.
So that must have been massively eye-opening for you when you started to apply that to Cardinal, right?
It really is, because when you have a company as large as Cardinal, but it doesn't have to be anywhere near that large. But when you have a company that has multiple processes, maybe multiple acquisitions or complicated connections between various systems, then there's most likely going to be some problem in that process, that it never works A to B to C to D like you map it out and design it. It sometimes goes to G and sometimes pops over here. And process intelligence and process mapping and mining really helps you see how processes really work, so that you can either fix the problems that might be happening, or you can connect them and get insights into your business that allow you to drive better results.
Thank you for explaining that so well. Steve, let me bring you in here. You have worked with numerous clients across the services sector. What are some of the business challenges that you're seeing process mining being put to?
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Mike had shared. We see three kind of common challenges that most organizations face as they work through kind of process outcomes and process mining and insights. The first is this idea of they've historically thought about themselves in functional silos, right? I'm focused on finance and accounts payable, not the procure to pay process, or how I handle orders, make credit decisions, and collect cash from customers, but not necessarily what are the outcomes I'm driving across a process like order to cash. And so for us, one of the challenges is breaking that functional silo and starting to align the organization, not necessarily boxes and lines to say you now are organizing yourself in a new way that's end to end, but really to drive clarity, transparency, and accountability across a set of business outcomes linked to those end-to-end processes. Concepts like business process owner, someone who's going to facilitate the insights that come from a tool like process mining and direct the organization to drive towards a better outcome, whether it be customer experience, effectiveness like speed, quality, accuracy, or productivity, is a critical role that now has to be in most organizations. I think the second is, and Mike touched a little bit about this, some of the technology barriers, right? Many organizations have kind of a mix of multiple ERP systems, manual interventions, other tools and capabilities that they've invested in to work around blocks in their process flow and to try to streamline some of the labor touching of the process. And so what we've seen is it's really hard for organizations to see through that mess, if you will, of technology and understand exactly how a transaction flows and what are all the blockers. What the process mining tool does is it allows us, Mike, I'm going to steal a word from you, curate that process, organize it in a way, and really visually understand kind of what's happening and what are some of the changes that could be required to free up manual work and improve the outcomes associated with it. So the technology barrier would be two. And I think the third is the data, right? Much of what we're focused on here is around how do we not only curate the process, but make sure we have transparency around the data and how do we manage and keep the data clean over time. And so oftentimes what we've seen is this uncovers not only process inefficiencies, but better data management and governance around how you organize that data for the organization, not for a discrete function to take advantage of it. So those are kind of three common challenges. I'd say the last is I think these challenges are particularly relevant for today. Everyone's talking about AI, agentic, Gen AI. And in order to take advantage of some of those newer technologies, you have to build the foundation around your process and your data, starting with process insights to be able to organize and leverage those newer technologies.
Steve, I was just going to ask you another clarifying question. As you work with clients and as you bring this kind of transparency and data mining into it, I imagine it has a bit of a democratizing effect in the sense that it's bringing a version of the truth that that can sit across teams. So it's no one team not doing their work or being challenged because the process isn't working or not optimized. It's like the entire organization. Do you find that that's a unifying factor, or are there other things that need to happen for the team to look at that objectively?
Yeah, it is a unifying factor, but it requires kind of a different approach than what most organizations have done as they've thought about transforming their front, middle, and back office kind of functions and processes. And it starts with, the CEO, i.e. Mike, as an example at Cardinal Health, and an executive leadership team that, again, is unified across a set of business outcomes we're trying to accomplish. And organizing the work and how we're going to drive change, in those cross-functional teams to be able to enable, the outcome unlock that the executive team is set out to be. So it starts with how you go approach some of these changes, and then putting in place resources and insights that allow us not only to say, how do we fix what's broken, but how do we manage and maintain the improvements that we have over time, and frankly, build a discipline in the organization that says, where I am today needs to continuously be challenged and improved as we go forward, because the technology, the data continues to evolve in a way that requires that level of change over time.
Yeah. Mike, let me bring you back in. So what was your experience and what did you learn?
I want to emphasize something Steve said that I thought was really spot on, because one of the things that I've learned early on in both my experience as a customer of a process mining and process intelligence, and even it's even expanded since then, and as working with these companies going forward and with customers that are utilizing it, is that Steve made a good point, is that it for it to be the most successful and get the most value, you got to look at the end-to-end process. And a lot of times what happens is a person that only has a piece of the process gets designated as the lead on the project, and you can never get the full value because you get stuck in the area that he or she is responsible for, which is a piece of the process. And so one of the things I've learned is that if you don't have C-suite sponsorship, typically CIO, COO, CFO, or CEO, because I was the sponsor at Cardinal, if you don't have someone at that level that cuts across all processes and periodically checks in, and when I say may sponsor, I know it's unrealistic to think the CEO is going to spend 10 hours a month, on it. But if you just check in once a month for an hour and say, tell us what progress we've made, that's the type of energy that gets it going. But you really need to have someone senior that says, this is important. We're going to look at it end to end, or what happens, you get trapped in silos. And I've seen dozens of companies that are dramatically underutilizing the potential of process intelligence and process mapping and all those things that come along with this, because they have no senior sponsorship, and it gets stuck delivering $2 or $3 million of value for $200,000 of cost, which is a great RI, but it's, in one little area versus leveraging and making $200 million of value because it gets across, the entire process in 25 different areas. So I do think senior sponsorship is a key piece of it. I think it also, secondly, what I've seen to be successful, it needs to be business-led, IT supported, not IT-led, business supported, because if you don't have the business lead, it won't get the attention. It just won't get the same level of attention and input and desire to achieve the final results that if you do when you flip it over onto the IT side. So IT is critical to it. They're important. They can bring a lot of value, but it should be business led. So those are two things I think that will really drive the success of someone in the areas of process mining or process intelligence.
The business led, IT enabled is critical to kind of my first point, right? Which is, again, these are business outcomes we're trying to drive, right? We're trying to improve straight through processing, working capital turns, the productivity across the organization. And, I think that is a tough thing to solve when it's just a technology solution. And so I think that's critically important as you think about what are we trying to achieve here with the foundation of process mining and insights.
And obviously comes back to Mike's advice to say, really need to have senior leadership that just keeps anchoring everything back into that business horizon, right? Mike, can you say more about how you, in your organization, kind of overcame some of the cultural potential challenges and people challenges, and how did you get your teams to embrace the new way of working, this new way of innovating?
Yeah, it's a great question because not only did I see it at where I worked, but I've seen it at many companies. Again, if you're not setting goals and periodically challenging the team to find new use cases, it will stall. The other thing you have to remember that's important, and I'll pull this together in a second, is that oftentimes the IT department's solution, and I get it, it's from where they came from, is build it themselves versus buy it from somebody else. And a lot of times if you turn it over and the process intelligence, process mining finds a problem, the solution can sometimes be, well, why don't we just build it ourselves, which could be 10x or more the cost of just utilizing the process of mining or process intelligence, and can elongate the process for very long periods of time versus getting value right away. So I think you need to make sure that as a leader, you're making sure to tell everybody it's okay to be transparent with our processes. Show me where the warts are and let's fix them as a team, like a real positive message. It's important that you deliver that so people want to embrace it because it is going to find, issues within your company. Second of all, you need to have that sponsorship to see it end to end so it doesn't get trapped. Third is you need to set goals. So once I did the proof of concept, we set a goal the first year of, say, 30 million of value from it. And then in year two, $70 million of value from it, because we saw the power of it. And just to go in and say, let's do the best we can with it, it just doesn't drive behaviors. But when you hold people accountable and say, this year, we're going to use this technology to drive $100 million of savings, people wake up and they start thinking of use cases. They start making sure you cut across the entire company, and they really get after it in order to achieve the results. And I think that's why, again, I emphasize the importance of a C-suite leader who has the ability to set those goals and hold people accountable, because when you do that, it unlocks a tremendous amount of value in the organization.
And I imagine a lot of time spent also celebrating those successes, right? Those kind of early milestones and quick wins.
100%. And not only is it just celebrating the wins, but it's discussing where you used it and it didn't work. Because sometimes you use it and you find out that maybe you are better in that area than you thought you were, or maybe it delivers like $2 million of value or $100,000 of value, and you really need to go after the stuff that's 5x that. So there are times that you celebrate the wins, but you also talk about when it came up short, why and where do you go? Because it's just a really powerful tool, but it's not always the best tool in every situation.
No. How would you now coach other peers and other leaders of businesses to get started? What are some of the kind of first things? Steve, let me come to you first with that one. When you're talking to your clients, how do you advise them and how to get started first?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's first recognizing this is not a novelty, right? I think the examples that Mike shared around the impact, and where we've seen it across a whole host of companies, we'd say the proof that it can demonstrate and realize value, starting with understanding the process and then and gleaning those insights, I think has already been clearly articulated, regardless of what process you're talking about. And for me, the key is really to get started, right? Which is to pick a technology tool, to work across all the requirements around data and security, and to align the organization to pick a place to say, where do we want to challenge ourselves to get better, and to define what getting better means. And then use that as the lighthouse example for celebrating the early wins, Stephanie, to your question, but also, proving that this is a capability and a muscle that we need to build across the organization. We're going to dedicate executive sponsorship. We're going to align project leaders to it. We're going to talk about the outcomes, the learnings, good, bad, and indifferent on a regular basis. And we're going to quickly kind of put in place interventions if we don't see we're achieving the outcome we want. But I think the key for me is to get started in an area across some of the processes we've already discussed: order to cash, procure to pay, hire to retire, as examples. So that would be kind of number one on my list.
Yeah.
Cool. And Mike, what about you? What gets the light bulb on in the people you talk to?
I believe that if you fully implement process mining or process intelligence, you can improve your bottom line 3 to 5%. So if you're $100 million bottom line company, there's probably at least 5 million involved in that with a 10x ROI. And if you're a $2 billion company, I believe there's at least $100 million there, and maybe more as you get complicated. And also maybe more if you include the insights and things, right? And I think what happens is C-suite executives often spend their time based on things they believe add value to the bottom line. So they prioritize their time based on what adds, right? Makes sense. That's what I did. I think what helped me is when this other executive that I admired and respected told me it saved $100 million to their bottom line. It gave me the scale in my mind that I should prioritize this. And I think a lot of reasons why it can't get on the radar of the C-suite is they don't have enough confidence that it's going to deliver a 3 to 5%. Because what CEO or CFO is not going to want to improve their bottom line by 3 to 5% without really doing anything like cutting people? It's like it's really improving things around there. And then the answer is probably very few wouldn't say they would want to spend time on it. But very few don't spend time on process intelligence, process mining, because they don't understand it at a level and they don't have the confidence like I did that says, wow, this is a really well-run company. He just told me they saved, $100 million. This is something I've got to prioritize. So I think as more and more people learn about it and build confidence and realize the scale at which you can drive value to the bottom line, I think you'll see more and more sponsorship, more and more positive results from it.
No one ever stands still. And obviously, technology is evolving. What is next on the horizon of process mining? Steve, you first.
I think we're at an inflection point where by reorchestrating how work happens across an organization, right? I think we're leveraging technology, whether it be AI, Gen AI, agentic, that's going to come in the next several years, and in many cases are here today. We think we're going to see tremendous productivity and better outcomes for core processes across every organization. And the numbers we think are going to be quite staggering in terms of the productivity unlock across those organizations and those processes. And so for us, it's how do we leverage the process mining and process insights today to understand how we work across multiple systems, data repositories, and organizations, and start to understand what are the outcomes, how good are we, or how healthy we are in those core processes, and leveraging the technology to think bigger, right? It's Mike's $100 million goal, but sprinkled across a whole host of different processes in a way that is going to allow the organization to work faster and be, we think, in many areas quite leaner. And so I think this is really the process mining of today is really around building the foundation of that aspiration, and is going to allow the organizations to kind of work through all of the reasons why they couldn't do it with automation and other technologies that have been around for the last 5 years. And so, we would say this is a necessary prerequisite to get to that aspiration and that level of productivity and effectiveness.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, with your hands-on experience, where do you see this going? Where is the potential?
I think it's well established in the areas of driving direct savings and providing insights. And I think where people are yet to really utilize it is where Steve's going, is around the area of AI and how you can effectively use AI. So I think every CEO, C-suite executive is getting pressure. What are we doing on AI? The board is asking everyone, what are you doing in this space, right? Every single board meeting. And the problem is right now, generally what you can use it on effectively is, sure, you can run a contract through a system and it can tell you what areas you might improve on it. And there's certain areas where it's used well. But where it's really tricky is that when you go to apply AI to your actual financial data or supply chain data, when that data is not connected, curated, and cleaned in a way that AI can tap into it and actually give you the right answer, it's dangerous to use. And so I think why people are really struggling to use it outside of some of those areas is because the data is not organized or connected in a way that you don't have a lot of risk of getting an hallucination or an incorrect answer off of the data. And so without process intelligence, process mining, connecting all of it so that you can see data across multiple systems get in to give you the right answer, there's really no way that you can effectively do AI in your company, because most of us know our data is not in perfect mint condition to then give you answers. The second thing is, even after you do that, and let's say for a minute, somehow you do use it effectively, you apply it, you cannot have AI unchecked. You need to monitor that the AI result is accurate. And again, that's where process intelligence and mining is going to come into play, where it monitors the actual results you're getting after it to make sure you don't do something that's so incorrect or damages a customer relationship or hurts you financially. So I think the importance of process intelligence in the area of AI is dramatically underestimated. And I don't think companies yet have fully embraced the understanding of how they're going to have to step into that before they step into that. Because in my mind, there's just no AI without PI.
That's a great way of closing this conversation. And Mike and Steve, we're going to have to get you back, because this is evolving quickly, and our expertise and also how we're seeing business cases and the case studies themselves evolve in different organizations will grow as well. And we're all still very much learning in this space. Thank you both so much for joining us. Steve, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Daphne, for having me. Exciting topic. And hopefully this is helpful for a whole host of folks, because we see real amazing potential as we work through this with organizations.
And Mike, thank you for joining and being so open with your experience. It was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you very much. And thanks for facilitating this. It was great fun.
You've been listening to McKinsey Talks Operations with me, Daphne Luchtenberg. If you like what you heard, subscribe and stay tuned. Another great episode starts now.